The first light of June 6, 1944 crept over the English Channel, revealing an armada unlike anything the world had witnessed before. Warships, landing craft, transports, and aircraft filled the horizon in every direction. Over 5,000 vessels carrying the hopes of an entire continent. Beneath the gray sky, soldiers from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and numerous allied nations prepared for an operation that would alter the course of modern history. This was the beginning of Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious assault ever attempted, and the moment that would mark the turning point of Europe's liberation from Nazi control. The stakes were extraordinary. For nearly 4 years, Western Europe had lived under German occupation, a reign marked by oppression, forced labor, persecution, and fear. Despite scattered resistance movements and clandestine operations, the region's liberation depended on a successful Allied return to the continent. Planning for this decisive strike took more than a year, involving strategic deception, meticulous intelligence gathering, and logistical preparations on an unprecedented scale. The Allies understood that the German defensive network along the coast, known as the Atlantic Wall, was constructed to repel invasions with heavy fortifications, minefields, artillery positions, and hardened bunkers. Every stretch of shoreline was scrutinized by military analysts. After extensive evaluation, the Normandy region of France was chosen as a landing site. It was less fortified than the Pas-de-Calais region, and its beaches offered suitable terrain for amphibious operations. Still, even under optimal conditions, the assault would demand extraordinary coordination and immense bravery. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, carried the burden of this monumental decision. Weather conditions remained unstable in early June, threatening visibility, air support, and the timing of tides crucial for landing craft. After hours of intense deliberation, he gave the order the operation would proceed. As the invasion fleet advanced through the choppy waters, airborne divisions took flight under the cover of night. Thousands of American and British paratroopers descended behind enemy lines, aiming to secure key bridges, roads, and villages to prevent German counterattacks. Their drop zones were chaotic. Heavy winds scattered units across unfamiliar terrain. But despite the disorder, they initiated their missions with determination, capturing crucial positions that would later support the beach landings. On the French coast, German defenders in fortified bunkers scanned the horizon. Many believed the Allies would strike at Pas-de-Calais, the closest point of Britain, due in part to an elaborate Allied deception campaign known as Operation Fortitude. Inflated tanks, fake radio chatter, and a phantom army group commanded by General Patton misled German intelligence into strengthening the wrong defenses. This strategic misdirection would become one of the unsung pillars of D-Day's initial success. Just after dawn, the first landing craft approached the 5 designated beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Engines roared. Naval guns unleashed thunderous fire, shaking the shoreline and tearing into German positions. Above the clouds, Allied bombers targeted coastal fortifications, while fighter aircraft swept the skies to secure aerial dominance. The full force of Allied military capability converged in a single coordinated effort. For the soldiers inside the landing craft, the atmosphere was a mixture of fear, resolve, and quiet anticipation. Many were young men barely in their 20s, aware that the coming minutes would define not only their fate, but the future of an entire continent. As the ramps dropped, they stepped into a storm of machine gun fire, mortar blasts, and crashing waves. Among the 5 beaches, Omaha would prove the most harrowing. Strong currents scattered the landing formations, while German defenses remained nearly intact. Units encountered deep water, obstacles, and deadly crossfire. Chaos erupted as men struggled to find cover, reorganize, and push forward under unimaginable pressure. Yet across the invasion front, despite adversity, pockets of Allied troops began to break through. Courage and sacrifice carved the initial footholds upon which the liberation of Europe would be built. Each meter of ground won came with a heavy cost, but the resolve of the operation held firm. By mid-morning, commanders across the line understood the magnitude of what was unfolding. Whether the invasion succeeded or failed would be determined within hours. The future of Europe hung in a precarious balance. And as the fighting intensified, a single question dominated the minds of commanders, soldiers, and nations alike. Would the Allies secure the beaches and open the gateway to liberating Europe? Or would the Normandy coastline become the graveyard of their greatest gamble? By midday on June 6, 1944, the scale and intensity of the Normandy landings had reached their peak. The entire coastline was engulfed in smoke, gunfire, and the relentless movement of soldiers trying to carve a path inland. The initial waves had suffered heavy losses, particularly at Omaha, but the beachheads were gradually forming. Amid the chaos, one truth became clear. The momentum of the invasion had shifted. The Allies were gaining a foothold, and the German defensive network, rigid, overstretched, and lacking rapid reinforcement, began to show its limits. As the hours progressed, reinforcements continued to arrive by sea. Tanks from specialized engineering units, including the amphibious DD tanks, finally made their way ashore in greater numbers. Armored support at last provided the infantry with the strength needed to push beyond the sand dunes and breach the inland defenses. Combat engineers dismantled mines and cleared barbed wire, while naval artillery delivered precise fire to neutralize surviving German bunkers. On Utah Beach, despite landing nearly 2 kilometers off their intended point, the U.S. 4th Infantry Division advanced steadily under the command of Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. His decisive leadership helped to maintain order and channel forces toward key objectives, achieving one of the day's most efficient breakthroughs. At Gold, Juno, and Sword Beaches, British and Canadian forces fought with remarkable coordination. Resistance was strong, but their advance inland was faster than anticipated in several sectors. Canadian units at Juno pushed farther than many other Allied divisions on D-Day, overcoming heavily fortified positions and securing crucial road networks. British troops on Gold and Sword linked up with airborne divisions who had captured strategic bridges in bold night operations. Meanwhile, German commanders faced severe constraints. The rapidity of the Allied assault, combined with mistaken assumptions about the landing site, delayed reinforcements. Field Marshal Rommel had warned that the defense could only succeed if the Allies were defeated on the beaches within the first hours. However, Rommel was away in Germany when the invasion began, and Hitler delayed the release of vital armored reserves until it was too late to mount an effective counterattack. When German panzer divisions finally mobilized, they encountered fierce Allied air power that hindered their movement and inflicted significant losses. As afternoon turned to evening, the beachheads expanded into interconnected strong points. The 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions continued to secure villages and road junctions behind Utah Beach, eliminating pockets of resistance and preventing German counterattacks from reaching the coast. British airborne troops maintained their hold on bridges across the Orne River, safeguarding the eastern flank of the invasion. Civilians in Normandy, caught between the warring armies, faced immense hardship, homes destroyed, fields scattered with debris, and towns turned into battlegrounds. Yet many understood that the arrival of the Allies carried the promise of liberation. Accounts from surviving residents describe mixed emotions: fear, hope, and disbelief as foreign troops marched through streets that had endured years under occupation. By nightfall, over 150,000 Allied troops had landed on French soil. The losses were significant, particularly on Omaha, but the operation had succeeded beyond the fears of many commanders. The beachheads held. The link between airborne and seaborne forces solidified. The door to Western Europe had been forced open. But the Normandy landings were only the beginning of a far larger campaign. In the days that followed, the Allies would confront the dense hedgerows of the French countryside, natural barriers that turned every field into a defensive stronghold. German panzer divisions regrouped for counterattacks, determined to halt the Allied breakout. Villages like Corentin and St. Lo became fiercely contested battlegrounds. Nevertheless, the psychological impact of D-Day resonated across the continent. Occupied nations sensed a shift in fortune. Resistance networks intensified their operations. German morale, already strained by years of war, wavered as the Western Front erupted into full-scale combat. The Eastern Front exerted continuous pressure on the German military, making it nearly impossible to redirect forces effectively. By late summer, following the breakout from Normandy and the decisive defeat of German forces in the Falaise Pocket, the Allies advanced rapidly across France. Paris was liberated on August 25th, signaling a strategic collapse of German control in the West. What began as a perilous gamble on the beaches of Normandy had transformed into a sweeping liberation campaign, ultimately pushing toward Germany's borders. Reflecting on the impact of the Normandy landings reveals the magnitude of the moment. A single day that redefined the trajectory of a global conflict and paved the path toward the end of tyranny in Europe. It demonstrated the power of coordination, the courage of countless individuals, and the determination of nations united against oppression. The echoes of June 6, 1944 continue to endure as a reminder of the turning point when hope returned to a continent and the course of history changed forever.